everyone, and welcome again to App Innovation's Ask an Expert series, where we speak to our lead developers on our team about different technologies, pick their brains a bit with some of the questions that you submit over social media. This week, we have one of our senior Drupal developers, Tim Millwood, from our Welsh office. Hi, Tim.
Hello.
Is Drupal 8 ready now, or should people wait for a while?
So yeah, it's definitely ready now. It's been out nearly a year. We'll be looking at releasing Drupal 8.2 in October. So there's already been sort of nearly 2 iterations on Drupal 8, and because of the new release cycle, we're getting new features and new updates in every one of these minor releases. So in 8.1, we had a great module added in called Big Pipe, which makes page loads a lot quicker. And then in 8.2, we're going to be looking at a number of new modules such as content moderation, outside in, and block place. So 8.3, 8.4, and so on will have great new features added as well. So it's nice to have this new release cycle.
Will Drupal 8 sites be quicker to build?
Well, it's a bit of a tricky question. It obviously depends on the site, depends on sort of who's building it. People who are seasoned Drupal developers from sort of Drupal 6 and Drupal 7, there's definitely a ramp up to Drupal 8 because it's quite a bit different to Drupal 7. The UI is pretty much the same as it was in Drupal 7. However, the code behind it has changed quite a bit. But then there are a lot of things that make Drupal 8 faster. There's been a lot of work put in to add Composer support. So if you're familiar with Composer from other PHP systems, then you can build your Drupal site with Composer. There's now a lot of modules in core that weren't in core before. The big one is Views. So Views is a module that you always had to add to your Drupal 7 site. Everyone used it, but now it's in core, so you don't even need to bother downloading and setting that up. It's there and running on the site. We've then got config management now in Drupal 8. So there may be config that you can export from one site and import it into a different site. So we'll start sort of building up reusable config that we can use across all of our Drupal 8 sites. And then Drupal console. In Drupal 7 and 6 and past, we had things like Drush, which is a command line interface for Drupal, and we still got Drush in Drupal 8, but we've now also got Drupal console. And the advantage of Drupal console is it can generate aspects of your site and aspects of your custom modules with really simple commands. So you can run a command and it will generate a custom module for you. You can run a couple of other commands and it will build up sort of entities within that module and plugins within that module. And this makes sort of building custom modules and building the site a lot easier. And it takes away the kind of boring aspects of building a custom module. So you get all of this kind of boilerplate scaffolding code in there already. So yeah, I think some aspects of it will be quicker. But yeah, it does depend on the site.
On a technical level, what are the 3 best advances that Drupal 8 delivers?
So there's so many things that Drupal 8 delivers. I think the biggest thing is probably the release cycle. Every minor release, we can now add new things into Drupal. We're following pretty much proper semantic versioning. So every minor release that we schedule for every 6 months, we can add in new features as long as they're not API breaking. But then, as I said, there's so many other features. There's things like configuration management. So whereas in Drupal 6 and Drupal 7, you'd use something like the features module, you can now download configuration as YAML files and add these into your site. You can import them or add them into a module, and it makes managing configuration a lot better. And then everything is now object-oriented. So the UI of Drupal 8 is very much the same as it was in Drupal 7, but the code underneath is pretty much all object-oriented. So that makes things a lot better for people coming to Drupal from outside of the Drupal community, because the wider PHP community are already used to a lot of these things. And there's a lot of Symfony components that are being used. So people who are already using Symfony framework or Laravel are familiar with a lot of these things. So there's things like services that are used everywhere else, and now they're used in Drupal as well. There's a load of other things like plugins and events that we also use that aren't in Drupal 7. So this makes building custom modules pretty different to what it was in Drupal 7, but I'd say it's a lot better. And then, as I said, this new release cycle allows us to add new things. So in Drupal 8.1, we had Big Pipe that makes page loads a lot quicker. And Drupal 8.2, we've got content moderation and outside in and block place modules all getting added in. And then hopefully in 8.3, we'll have the trash module, which I'm currently working on for Drupal core. So yeah, a lot more than 3 advances for Drupal 8, but there is so much good stuff going on.
What's your favorite D8 feature and why?
So I think my favorite feature would be content moderation. That's something I just mentioned is going into 8.2, but I'm pretty biased for that. I'm the core maintainer for content moderation, so I had a lot of work to do to try and get what was workbench moderation for Drupal 8 over into content moderation, which is the core version of that. So there's a number of changes that we made to workbench moderation for it to be ready for core. The biggest one was to allow you to uninstall it. It may be crazy, but workbench moderation you can't actually uninstall because of the way the data is stored. So one thing that we needed for it to work in core was it to be uninstallable. But I think other than that, other than sort of my biased approach, is probably the release cycle, which I mentioned earlier as well. The Drupal 8 release took 5 years. So from the initial work to the final release was a 5-year span. And in that time, we were sort of adding new code to Drupal 8, but you never got to store it, you never got to use it until that 5 years was done and Drupal 8 was out. But now we can add new things to Drupal 8, and if they're bug fixes, they'll get out every few weeks. If they're big changes, well, not changes, but big additions, then these can get in every 6 months. So this is really good that we can add new modules in like content moderation, and we can make new additions to core. As long as they don't break the API, then we can get them in every 6 months. And I think this is really great and hopefully a sort of groundbreaking thing for Drupal.
Wow, that sounds awesome. So I think that's all the questions we have for this week. Thank you again, Tim, for your time. For anybody out there watching, again, this is a regular series that Appnovation will be offering. Check our Facebook and our Twitter pages for a call for questions for our future Ask an Expert series videos. And we'll see you next time.